Record now. Let's take a look at this question here. It says clearly on this practice OGT question, it says, let's read it. Students conduct an experiment to test whether or not the trait of pollen shape and trait of flower color are next to each other on the same chromosome. I've done this already before with you, but let's go ahead and think about what that means. That means that there's a trait for pollen shape. Let's see, what are the shape? The symbols are L and P. L and P are next to each other on the same chromosome. That means the word we use is that they are linked. When genes are on the same chromosome, they're linked. That means they're going to move together. All right? By using the word next to each other, when they say use the word next to each other, they're going to imply to you that there's not going to be a lot of crossing over. Because if they were far away from each other on the same chromosome, they could be crossing over, but there's not going to be a lot of crossing over here, so they're going to stay together. Is that clear? That's what the implication is. So the next part of this reading says they cross two plants that are known to be what? Heterozygous for both traits. So they're heterozygous for both traits. So that means that you have a plant that is big L. Oh wait, let's read the whole thing because if I remember correctly, there's another little trick to this. They cross two plants that are known to be heterozygous for both traits to produce an offspring. Long is dominant over round. Purple is dominant over red. Click on the value of phenotype frequency of the graph that would be expected. If the traits are linked, whoever's playing music can stop now or get in trouble. Frequency on the graph that would be expected, the traits are linked and the dominant traits are next to each other on the same chromosome for both plants. Did you see that? This is the trick. This last sentence is what is going to allow you to solve this problem. So they're next to each other, that means no crossing over. They're heterozygous, that means they have one big L and one little l, right? One big P and one little p. But they're also telling you that the big L and big P are next to each other on the same chromosome, and the little l and little p are on the same chromosome for both of these parents. Could you tell Miss Evans to turn her music off and to focus her mind on her work? So when we're looking at this, and you're making this cross, they want to know, what would you expect to be the result? So to do this cross, we would do a dihybrid cross, right? Right? We would do foil, except we really are not going to have crossing over. So what are the only two, right? Normally we would expect 4 possible gametes from each parent, right? Normally, because they're heterozygous, you'd expect 1, 2, 3, 4 eggs, 1, 2, 3, 4 different kinds of sperm, right? You'd expect that a parent could be big L, big P, big L, little p, little l, big P, and little l, little p. But that's not possible here. There's only 2 possible outcomes for each parent, and that's because there's no crossing over. You can't, remember we went through that activity where you looked at crossing over and they asked you the question, what would happen if there's no crossing over? You would have less genetic variation. So because there's no crossing over, that means you can only give this one or you give this one. You give this one or you give this one. So you're either giving big L, big P, or you're giving little l, little p. You get big L, big P, or you get little l, little p. So it's not, even though it's a dihybrid cross, you only have 4 possible outcomes. What are those 4 possible outcomes? You can have big L, big P, You have big L, big P, little p. You can have little L, big L, big P, little p, and you can have little L, little p, little p. So, again, remembering that big P is purple, little p is yellow, big L is, what is it, long or short? Is it long or short pollen? Big L is round, sorry. And little L is, help me. No, big L is long and little L is round. Do you see that? So that means that here, I'd expect, this is, please pay attention, it's all I can say to you. So little p is going to be yellow. So these are going to be yellow. These are going to be yellow here. It's the only yellow one. This will be round and yellow. This is the only one that's going to be round and yellow. So that's 1/4. Do you agree? Yes or no? Yes. Do you see that? 1/4 round and yellow. This one is going to be long and purple, purple. And guess what? All three of these are going to be long and purple, aren't they? Because they all have one big L and one big P at least. So you only expect to see two possible outcomes. You expect to see purple flowers with long grain, 3/4 of them, which would mean if we're doing 3/4 of, that would be something that looks like this, right? 75%, 3/4 of 75%. So you would take that graph, that bar, and move it up to this point. And then what quarter would be, there would be, how many would be red flower with round? There would be none with long pollen, right? Red and long. That wouldn't exist. So this is 0. This is wrong. Red flowers, red with round, red and round. How many would you expect to see? What percentage? 25% to be red and brown. And that would mean that you'd be dealing with something that looks like this. You'd expect this, and you'd expect this, and you would not expect anything else. This is no-go. This is not something we'd want to see. So this is the right answer. And why is that? Why don't we see the 93:3:1 ratio? Because the reason you don't see a 93:3:1 ratio is because there's only two possible gametes you can have because they're linked. There's no crossing over. There's only two kinds of sperm and two kinds of eggs you can make. So there's only 4 possible genotypes and only 2 possible phenotypes. Yeah.
So every time they say the word link, it's 2.
It's a good bet. Follow the details though. You got to be careful, right? You got to be careful because the trick here. What was the trick? See how tricky they can get. And you asked me why are your questions so hard, Mr. Mendoza, on your test? Because these are the kinds of questions the state's gonna ask you. So they say next to each other on the same chromosome for both plants. That tells you that they're on the same, and they also tell you what? That let me get the other highlighter out. They say it's a little bit further up. They click on the values they're linked, and the dominant traits are next to each other. The dominant traits, did you see that? The key here is that you got the dominant traits are next to each other on the same one, and that they're heterozygous for both traits. So those 3 things, those are the 3 key points that they're telling you. One, 1, 2, and 3. Those 3 points tell you that you're dealing with this situation. Otherwise, had they not been next to each other, that means they're not linked. That means you would have at least 4, right? And if you didn't know that if they were homozygous for one and heterozygous for the other, maybe you only get 100% of one kind instead of getting 75 and 25. So the percentages are going to change depending on the situation. So you got to read the situation. You have to spend some time and do a Punnett square. Think about it. If they're linked, how many can I make? If these weren't linked, you're right. I would have I would do FOIL, do a 9 and 3 to 3 to 1 ratio. Then I'd have 4 different possible outcomes. I'd have 9 of one, 3 of the other, 3 of the other, 1 of the last, right? So that's the trick to this question. It's probably one of the hardest questions on this practice OST, but if the state is giving it to you on a practice OST, I would expect that they're going to have something like it on the test. So understand it. I hope this helped you. Did it help you? Okay, so try to look at it and think about it. Come back and try it again tomorrow or the next day. Try the same problem and see if you can do this on your own. And if you can't, go back and look at the video. I'll post it right now.